Hello, my true crime lovelies. How are you? I hope you are well. I hope the weather is well. I hope your family is well. I hope you are as lovely in life as you are in my mind. All right, we're going to go over. I'm catching up. I'm trying to close out my Lori Daybell playlist, and I did a live with Child TV Live, Florida PI Sam, and Joe Schmo earlier, and we were talking about obviously the trial because we were covering the digital evidence, and someone mentioned that Treena K was leading a lot, and I was like, yeah, she's Arizona's leading lady. And Squeegee of Justice was like, how long have you been holding that? And I was like, I don't know that I have. I thought of it, but not necessarily as a funny. But anyway, when Treena and Lori had Detective Pillar on the stand, I'm going to show you a little bit of the cross. Like, Lori's cross is long and foolish, but it gets interesting when she starts talking about why they didn't preserve the window. And then Trina comes back, like, Trina is mad, comes back and is like, you'll see. Let's get into it. Let's thank the members because it is like, Lori just didn't know to object to leading questions, apparently. But let's thank the members, and I will see you on the other side. Lori's almost done with her cross. We're going to start with this window foolishness.
Tesla for a second. What happened with the Tesla window? I know it fell out of the car. I'm sitting on the driveway. So where did it go from there?
The Tesla, the glass from the window that fell out of the Tesla itself was discarded.
Was what?
Thrown away. It was discarded.
Oh, it was thrown away.
Yes.
And when did that happen?
I don't recall. I believe after we were concluding our time at the scene, we had our photographs of it, was turned over to the resident, in that case, Mr. Boudreau, to dispose of.
Okay. And it wasn't preserved for any reason?
No.
Why not?
We collected what we needed from it at that moment.
How could it be preserved if it was thrown away, ma'am?
And the amount of glass that was there in the images that were taken seemed sufficient at the time. And so it was simply thrown away.
Was there a hole in that window at all? Like a bullet hole?
A bullet hole through the window outside of the images that have been presented that would indicate where an impact point may have been. So kind of the curvature towards the top of the glass. Outside of that, no, there was no other damage that would match about a bullet hole.
Which makes sense because Brandon only testified to one shot. So there could not be a bullet hole elsewhere other than the damage that was at the top. And remember, the Tesla, as they described it, does not have a separate like window frame. You know how some cars you open the door and there's still metal there that the glass slides into? The Tesla didn't have that. So I guess it just slid into the door frame.
Okay. And you didn't carefully put on 2 pairs of gloves and take it to the evidence room at the Gilbert Police Department. Is that correct?
Asked and answered.
Take the glass?
Correct.
That's correct.
And what about the Tesla? So what happened to the Tesla that day?
After we processed the Tesla at the scene, we transported it over to the Gilbert Police Department to further inspect indoors. Essentially, it was just one more act that we could take to better review what we had already investigated for the hours that we were outside.
And was it like towed? Do you tow it over?
No, it was, although unorthodox, it was transported by myself and followed by Detective McDermott to the property and evidence building where we had a technician standing by. Once arrival to the garage at that facility, we further looked into the bullet hole, and we weren't there very long. It was, again, another last review of the damage.
So you drove it over, is that correct?
That is correct.
And it was photographed?
Yes, we photographed the vehicle at the scene. Once at the police department, we have the surveillance cameras, but we didn't photograph it further once at the police department. We had no intention of impounding it at that time.
And it was measured?
No, the
The
bullet,
bullet hole and things were measured? All that was done at the scene, but nothing was done at the Gilbert Police Department.
Yes,
And then it wasn't tested for the trajectory while at the Gilbert Police Department?
that's
How?
correct.
And it wasn't placed into evidence?
We did not impound the vehicle. The purpose for that was it was the victim's only vehicle at that time, similar to the smartphone that we took temporary custody of. For convenience purposes, it was ultimately turned back over to the owner, in this case, Mr. Boudreaux, both the vehicle and the smartphone.
Within a day?
Yes, approximately a day. It was a very brief period of time.
Okay. And having been
So remember, her theory is Brandon is plotting against her for some unknown reason and has made this story up, or Brandon and the Gilbert Police Department are conspiring against her for this conviction.
a case agent hundreds of times, you must have known that if you were ever going to charge someone with this crime, then surely you would need this evidence so the defense could hire their own experts to do testing of the car and the window, right?
The crime of this caliber, and it's not uncommon for cases to develop into something more than what you initially believe, that's part of being human, part of being an investigator. We did not take the vehicle in this case. We did not have a decedent. In other words, we did not have a person who was injured or killed. We had property damage, and we were still very early in our investigation to determine what happened. So no, we did not maintain custody of that vehicle.
So is it not in your protocol to preserve evidence,
It's in our protocol to preserve evidence.
but not in this case?
In this case, I made the decision not to maintain custody of that Tesla.
So without this evidence available, how would my experts be able to test for trajectory?
We couldn't test for trajectory with what we had. If it was here today, it's possible that you guys could test for trajectory with the advancements in technology. Again, not being somebody who is trained or certified in any type of trajectory training, I don't know how that process would even look, but we simply don't have the vehicle today as we're discussing this.
Right.
And you don't have an expert at Gilbert Police Department that's an expert in trajectory?
At that time, we did not.
Okay. And how would my ballistics expert be able to test the hole in the Tesla to determine, in fact, if it was a rifle or a handgun that was used? How would I do that now?
How would you go about?
How would I have an expert do that now?
He's not an expert. How would
hire
he know?
Somebody who would potentially be a specialist in this area and see if they had the ability to obtain evidence of trajectory. But how would you do that now outside of hiring somebody and doing that without the vehicle? I suppose you could not.
Or the pictures. Could they not use the pictures? What difference does it make? Are you going to say that it
Is
wasn't
it possible
Alex?
to perform our own tests from pictures?
How would he know?
Tests? No.
Oh, he does know.
And did you request any tests be performed on the Tesla itself?
Like what?
Outside of trying to obtain the surveillance footage and do our best that we could with what we had for the bullet hole itself, no additional tests were made.
And no testing was done with the windows either. Is that correct?
Okay, true crime lovelies. Like, where have we seen this in any case? Like, the most you would want to test for is if the shooter had a different story, right? If there was it was a known shooter who said, "Oh no, there was a bird I was trying to get," or whatever random thing. Like, this is super specific. I don't think testing the trajectory. What is her argument? Like, there was another secondary shooter who also happened to be there, just happened to be when Alex was hanging out with you in the Walmart in Idaho buying a burner phone and then coming and buying a burrito on his way all the way to Arizona, happened to be on the same street outside waiting on Brandon at the same time Alex was there because Brandon saw him in the Jeep with the Texas plate and no wheel. Like, this doesn't make any sense.
You're referring to the glass that was?
Yes, the glass.
No other tests were done with the glass.
And how
Because
about
it
the
was
four
in the
pieces of
trash.
projectile that were found? Were any of those tested?
Tested for,
For what kind of bullet it came from or what kind of gun they came from?
again, not being a munitions expert, but seeing what bullet fragments look like and what projectiles can turn into upon impact. Those fragments could not determine any type of rifling, which is the marks that are made within a barrel when a weapon is shot, because the bullet was not intact, and we had no casing. We had no gun to verify where it came from. We simply had some markings of some possible jacketing and the lead, which appeared consistent with a bullet that was fired and then, of course, was fragmented. We were satisfied that we had a individual get shot at by some firearm, be it rifle, handgun, but a firearm, eastbound to westbound, that collided and then ultimately ended up in Mr. Boudreau's body frame. But to send it off for further testing, no, we did not send it off for further testing based on any reason that we knew we would not be able to get any viable weapon to compare it to, or any type of rifling where that would match another firearm.
Well, would it make a big difference if it wasn't a rifle at all and what Mr. Boudreau saw was a rifle?
Can you rephrase that question?
So if you were to test it and someone to say, this came from a handgun, this did not come from a rifle, that would make a big difference in the story that Mr. Boudreau told to you, though, right?
No.
It would not.
No, because there was
So
some
if you did not see a handgun,
firearm.
but if it came from a handgun, that would be contradictory, would it not?
To his statement of believing it was a rifle,
Correct.
his belief in mere observation for those split seconds of a weapon firing at him, I can't say for certain if it would have been from a handgun or a rifle. If we had an intact projectile or a shell casing, we'd have an answer to that. What we have now are bullet fragments and a bullet hole, and evidence to indicate that this happened. This shooting at Mr. Boudreau did in fact occur.
But you didn't test it.
The fragments were not tested.
No.
Now, Detective Pillar, how many neighbors confirmed that they heard a gunshot?
And that makes sense to you guys, right? It wasn't whole. It wasn't in enough of a singular piece to be able to identify, because when you're checking the bullet or the casing, you're looking for markings of like what kind of weapon it would have come out of. And then once you find a weapon, you would have your tester shoot the bullets out of that one, and then you would compare it to your crime scene bullet and or casing. But if it's in pieces, you can't test that. I mean, how would you recreate that? Find a rifle, shoot it out, bang it up. You know what I mean? Like you would be altering it. She's reaching here.
Hearing a loud bang or hearing a gunshot, approximately 4, 5?
4. Do you know who those were? Who those neighbors were?
Not off the top of my head, no. From my memory.
Was that in one of your reports, that 4 neighbors heard a gunshot?
In my report, I documented the detectives who made contact with neighbors that either heard something or had electronic surveillance on their house that, although did not capture footage of the incident, captured consistent
sound.
noise of a loud bang, as well as a vehicle idling for an extended period of time near their residence, which is near where the Jeep would have been parked prior to Mr. Boudreau arriving and then upon his arrival.
So we had that one Ring camera of the woman, the female neighbor, and it definitely sounded like a gunshot.
But it just captured audio with no footage of the actual shooting.
But you say multiple neighbors. Is that what your understanding was? That
Yes.
multiple neighbors heard a loud noise?
Yes.
So Brandon heard a loud noise. You have the ring that was a loud noise, right?
Hmm.
Who else?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Could it be that there was no one else, just those 2?
There were other neighbors that acknowledged hearing a noise. That was a loud noise. That was not a normal noise.
Were those across the street neighbors, neighbors
my
on the other
gosh.
side?
I would have to refer to the detectives who interviewed individuals who said they heard something. And those detectives notated the addresses in which they heard a noise. But when I say multiple, clearly, I mean more than one person heard.
So 2 is multiple in your book. Is that correct?
In this case, we have more than 2 that have testified, but there are others that made.
More than 2 people have testified here that they heard a loud noise?
Yes.
And who would those be?
We have the neighbor with the Ring camera, and I forget her name. I apologize. And then we have Mr. Boudreau, who heard that.
Mhm.
And then we had, those are the 2 that we had so far with the loud noise and the consistent evidence.
So you would consider that multiple people. Is that correct?
But there are others within the report that acknowledge hearing the noise, yes.
Not in any report that I read, in a report that you read?
Argumentative.
Testifying
Oh.
and asked and answered argumentative.
That's the objection sustained.
Sustained.
In a sworn statement that you made, Detective, You put the other neighbors confirmed they observed a gray colored hardtop 2-door Jeep.
Okay, she's gonna go on about the color. We already had a conversation about the color. I'm gonna skip over to Treena, Arizona's leading lady. I think Lori got confused because on cross you're allowed to ask. This is Treena getting up. Leading questions, but on direct you're not. So they're having a sidebar here. They have their headsets on. Yeah, on cross you can ask leading questions because you just want to get to the point and solicit the information. On direct, you're not meant to, but Treena did it throughout the whole trial. But it was, I don't know, it tickled me. It was particularly funny, even though I understand we're at a attempted murder trial. But like, she was mad, and so she was like, "We're just gonna get this out." Like, everything this woman just said is foolishness. I'm not going to waste your time making you strain your brain to think of the answer. I'm going to give you the answer. You're going to tell me yes or no. Headsets are off. And here we go. Buckle up.
Right, Detective, I'm going to go back to some of the questions that we started with yesterday. That's kind of also come in through today. During your investigation and through testimony you heard here, did we have a witness, Robert Abitamarco, that just said the Jeep was dark colored?
Yes,
No specifics of what color that was, just dark.
correct.
And then we've heard Brandon thought that the vehicle was some sort of camo or green color.
Yes,
And then eventually, we also learned that through statements made by Brandon Boudreau to both Officer Rob and yourself, that he believed this case was tied to an incident in Chandler. Did you learn that Lori Vallow, in fact, had a dark-colored Jeep?
yes,
And when you were able to obtain those photographs, did you learn that the Jeep was then gray?
yes,
You were asked about a probable cause statement that you wrote on November 19th, 2019. Do you recall that?
yes,
Was that after you learned about the gray vehicle, the gray Jeep that Lori Vallow had?
So you guys see it, right? It's all leading. He's answering yes or no because she's putting the answer in the question and he just has to agree or disagree with that. That is technically only allowed on cross-examination because ostensibly the witness is hostile to the person that is cross-examining them. So you don't want to just give them like wide open latitude to say whatever the hell they want to say, although Miss K got that in when she was like, and you didn't tell me, Kay Woodcock. And so all of this is coming in. I don't know. I think he's grateful because he's like, oh my God, I just want to get out of here. This is his second day on the stand. And he just had to deal with Delulu Noreen for like hours. And so, but Lori just sits there. And I've watched other commentary and there are, people in the chat and the comments like, oh, the judge shouldn't have allowed it. This is the decision Lori made. She decided to represent herself. The judge he can't practice law from the bench. He can't be like, objection, leading. That's not his role.
Had on July 11th of 2019 in Chandler, Arizona at that incident?
yes,
And in that probable cause statement, do you just in fact say that it was a dark colored or gray colored Jeep?
yes,
You don't actually say that a specific neighbor said that or where that information came from.
correct. I was working with multiple detectives.
So you're using all of the different information that you gleaned, which included the fact that this defendant owned a gray Jeep Wrangler with Texas license plates, and that was put into your statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Now,
What's going
you
through
were
his
asked a
head?
lot about the measurements of the Tesla and trajectory. Did Brandon Boudreau stop at the time of the shooting and put down a little ticky-tack marker and say, better note this for later so I can tell the detectives exactly where my vehicle was when I was shot?
No, he did not.
Did Brandon Boudreau get out of his car and go over and mark the exact end of the Jeep so that you would know exactly where that was when he was shot?
No, he did not.
Did he go over and tell the person, whoa, I gotta wait and find out exactly how this rifle barrel is sticking out of the back of your Jeep so that later on, they'll be able to document the height, the angle, if it's up, if it's down, if it's a little to the right or left, so that later on they'll be able to do some trajectory?
No,
So none of that happened.
none of that happened.
He's trying not
Were
to
you
laugh.
surprised he didn't do that?
Not at all.
So you did receive information
Look at the
from
judge.
another neighbor that they saw the Jeep in the approximate same location of where Brandon Boudreaux saw it,
Yes.
parked there idling, running,
Yes.
same direction as Brandon gave,
Yes.
the same Texas plate as Brandon gave,
Yes.
and same dark tint as Brandon said.
Yes.
So when you talk about this only being Brandon, that's not accurate, right?
Correct.
In fact, Robert Abitamarco said he didn't even know Brandon because he just moved in, right?
Correct.
And so ultimately, when we're talking about trajectory, without knowing all of those specifics, were you aware of any way to recreate how the rifle was held, what angle it was at when it fired that shot into the Tesla, not knowing where the Tesla exactly was either?
No, unable to determine that.
You were asked about the glass as well. When you package items, you put them in a box, a bag, a plastic bag, something like that, right? Depending on the piece of evidence you're collecting.
Yes.
Did you have any way to keep that glass from never disintegrating anymore so that it wouldn't change from the way it looked on October 2nd if you impounded it?
No, with shattered glass, it would continue to shatter. We have no way to package it to stay in its form when it's already broken.
So when you're talking about impounding that item or just throwing it away, if you put it in a box and you travel it to impound and then somebody throws it up into wherever it goes, could you say if you pulled it back out 5 years later that it looked exactly like it did that day when it fell onto the ground?
Absolutely not.
So is that why photographs were taken there?
Photographs, yes.
Imagine that, right? That would be like a puzzle that who the hell would have time to put that back together again? Because it sounds like that it was being held, like it's shattered, but it's still connected because of the tent. We learned that they come with factory tent, right? But if you are still like if you package it up, move it around. I'm thinking of the Sarah Boone case. They had glass that was like wrapped in paper. Her very large, what was it? The Magnum wine bottles. It was wrapped so it couldn't bump up against each other. But how could you wrap broken glass and it not further disintegrate? It just is like, I don't know, maybe Lori read a book about just poke holes in the prosecution story, not like poke holes that are actually plausible, that would actually cause someone to doubt, that would cause a reasonable person to doubt.
You were asked a lot about the interview of Brandon. During that audio recording, have you listened to that?
I have.
You told us you were in your vehicle, right?
That's correct.
And was your AC blowing very hard?
It was a warm day out, so yes, we were both. I was sitting in the driver's seat, he was in the passenger, and the vehicle was on with AC running.
Did Brandon talk soft at times?
Yes.
In listening to the recording, is it often difficult to hear what he's saying?
Yes.
And would you agree that the best evidence would be the actual recording versus someone's interpretation of what they believe he was saying?
Yes.
When you were considering the evidence at the scene, in addition to Robert Abitamarco, when you looked at that ring camera footage that we saw in court from Lynette Mendoza, did the black vehicle that you see appear to be consistent with a Tesla?
Yes.
Was it driving in the general direction of or towards Brandon Boudreaux's home on that video?
Yes.
And was there a timestamp showing when you heard that loud bang after that vehicle went by?
Yes.
When was that?
It's at 9:13 and some seconds.
And was the 911 call made by Brandon around 9:14?
Yes.
So was that another piece of evidence that was considered by you in corroborating what Brandon had told you and what Robert Abitamarco had seen and what the physical evidence told you?
So she's showing the corroboration, right? It's blowing holes in Lori's theory that Brandon made it up. Like it happened by video evidence at 9:13. He called at 9:14, Brandon did, and neighbors corroborated hearing the sound of a gunshot or a loud bang around that time.
Yes.
When you were looking at the Tesla itself, you advised us that you have seen bullet holes into vehicles previously.
Yes.
And you have seen fragments of projectiles previously?
Yes.
When you looked at that bullet hole in those fragments, did you have any question as to whether or not that Tesla had been shot?
No question at all.
Did you ever recover a gun that you knew was used in this?
No.
Would the fact that it was one type of rifle change the fact that Brandon Boudreaux's vehicle was shot that day?
No.
Could a handgun kill someone?
Yes.
Could a rifle kill someone?
Yes.
So we still got attempted murder. Are the judge's eyes closed?
You were asked yesterday about LPR, license plate reader. Do you recall that?
I do recall that.
And we had heard from Tom Miller about the DEA license plate readers.
That's correct.
Is that the only license plate readers that exist?
No.
In this investigation, well, the defendant had asked you about there being no other license plate readers showing this Jeep. Is that accurate?
That is not accurate.
Was there a LPR hit for the Jeep Wrangler Texas plate LWD 0997 in a city south of Rexburg, Idaho on September 30th of 2019 at about 8:10 p.m.?
Yes.
Was there an LPR hit in Idaho for the Jeep Wrangler license plate LWD 0997 on US Highway 20 near Rexburg, Idaho at 3:54 and 4:28 a.m. on October 3rd?
Yes.
Would that again be consistent with other evidence that you learned in this case from other individuals?
Yes.
You were asked a bit about a cast report done by Nick Balance. Do you recall that?
I do.
Did you create that?
I did not create that report.
Did you provide some of the cell phone records that we admitted and talked about that you obtained through search warrants to Mr. Balance?
Yes.
And did information that he gleaned from that and that he made into that report that you reviewed appear consistent again with a timeline of that Jeep leaving Idaho on the 30th of September and being down in Arizona on October 2nd of 2019?
Yes, it did.
You were asked about a lot of different emails and information that you had with interactions that you had with Brandon Boudreaux. Do you recall that?
I do recall that. Yes.
And would it be fair to say, Detective, that at the time of February of 2020, you were investigating multiple cases?
Yes, that is accurate.
Would it be fair to say that in February of 2020, you were also investigating multiple cases with other agencies involving Melanie Boudreaux? At the time of this shooting, we have discussed that this defendant and her brother, Alex Cox, were living in Rexburg, Idaho, correct?
Correct.
Were you then working with the Rexburg Police Department to help obtain information from Rexburg and other counties around there in relation to this investigation?
Yes.
So in any time when you were obtaining search warrants or continuing your investigation, were you pulling in information being provided to you from people such as the DEA LPR reader,
Yes.
Fremont County LPR readers,
Yes.
information being obtained by police up in Idaho
Yes.
from search warrants that they were executing,
Yes.
as well as search warrants that you executed up there on the Jeep?
Correct.
Was all of that put together when you were determining whether or not you had information to corroborate what Brandon Boudreaux told you on October 2nd of 2019?
Yes. It was a collective effort.
And an aggregate of data.
Although you are the case agent in this matter because it occurred in Gilbert, did you have to rely heavily on aid from the Rexburg Police Department and other agencies to obtain evidence in Idaho?
Yes.
And are those detectives in a better position to discuss things such as storage units or burner phones that were purchased up there?
Yes, they are.
Although you are familiar with those and they were all relevant to this investigation, would it be fair to say that since they obtained it, they're in a better position to testify as to it?
Absolutely.
So it's interesting because she makes this point. Hermosillo has not testified yet, but he would be able to, and he in fact did testify about the storage unit and the video. Lori had 0 questions for him. She was not up there being sassy with Hermosillo like she was with this one. Please hold. Okay, that was my alarm. My 3:20 a.m. alarm for me to get up and make videos. Little does that alarm know I'm already making them and going to go to sleep shortly. But anyway, yeah, she had all of this chutzpah for Pillar and nothing at all for Hermosillo. I think she's afraid of him. Also, I like it just this is gonna sound crazy, but I'm putting myself in the mind of Lori, which is dangerous. This gentleman is of smaller stature than Hermosillo. I mean, Hermosillo, I've said it before, I'm objectifying him. He looks like a superhero. So physically, like his stature is also intimidating. I just don't think she wanted that bravado from him, because I feel like she tried to run roughshod over this dude over nothing. I mean, I skipped some of it, but like there was a cigarette on the ground, and the neighbor said it was, not typical for a cigarette to be around his property. So they collected it, but they didn't do the DNA. And so she asked Pillar, did you test it for DNA? And he said, no. And she laughed and she was like, ha, ha, what was the point of collecting it then? But I did see some jury comments. I think I want to say Hidden True Crime, or I heard the jury comment. They were not impressed with her. Like, they found her laughter, her demeanor odd. And yeah, why would that be funny? You're on trial for attempted murder. They collected a cigarette. Maybe they saved it so you could test it later to identify it, since you're so annoyed that they didn't test, or they didn't save broken glass for testing.
Thank you. I have no other questions for this witness.
Are there any questions for this witness from any member of the jury? If so, please pass those down. I see at least one.
Oh, I like her bangs, or fringe, as y'all say in the UK. So I think headphones. It looks like Treena has her headphones on. Yeah, the judge is putting his on. Lori, I can't tell with her hair. Oh, it looks like she's grabbing her ears there. So I think he reads the questions and then they agree to what will be read out loud onto the record. Which is interesting because this is technically part of the record, but it's not what the jurors will hear. So they won't hear all the questions that their fellow jurors asked if it's not going to be answered. I hope Judge Bresky gets a nice vacation in between verdict and sentencing. He's earned it. I know he had somewhere to go, a conference or something, which is why Lori thought, oh, I'll run him off. Or if I drag it out long enough being sick, he won't be available.
Before I ask these, are there any other juror questions? All right. In your experience, is it unusual for witnesses to confuse colors or not remember them accurately?
Yes. I go answer this for you, Your Honor.
I'll let the parties follow up on that if they need to. The next question is, were the attempted phone calls to wife recorded during the in-car interview of Brandon on the day of the shooting? I guess, let's clarify, did you record those phone calls?
To the second question, yes, those calls were recorded.
And were voicemails left explaining the situation?
A voicemail was left requesting a response for a call back, not explaining the situation. That was from Brandon. And then I know I later called and left a message explaining my involvement as a detective who wanted to talk to Melanie Boudreau at the time. And she later responded, and the interview happened the next day.
All right. Follow up on that question from the defense, on those three questions from the defense. From the state.
In terms of colors and not remembering them accurately, you said it's not unusual for a witness to not remember always a color. Is that due to just sort of the circumstances surrounding what's happening when they're trying to observe these things like a vehicle?
Yeah, so I'll answer this in a couple parts. It is not uncommon for people to commonly mistake black for white or red for blue or different colors, assuming they're not colorblind to begin with. You amplify that situation, for lack of better words, in a traumatic situation, going out to multiple violent scenes, or even not a violent scene, just an emotional scene, maybe between a domestic dispute. It is quite common that colors for vehicles or clothing or hairstyles or hair color are mistaken, especially when you add the traumatic element to it. So
Any other questions?
All right, you can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
State can call its next witness.
Thank you.
Oh, so yeah, Arizona's leading lady. She let Lori have it. I wonder, like I said, they're advisory council, but they don't give advice that you don't ask. So, and I'm surprised, like between the two trials, nobody said anything like a pod mate, or is she in a pod? No, she's in isolation. She's locked down 24 or 23 and 1. I don't know. That just was like a major error. I don't feel sorry for her. She chose to be her own attorney. They don't give you, the judge can't give you legal advice. Apparently, the advisory council only advises when you ask. And so, oops, she made her bed and she got to lie in it. So, what do you guys think? Was anybody out there like weeping tears for Lori, not knowing to object? I think all of her questions were foolish anyway. So that also, like, listen, I'm a fan of justice. Y'all know me. I'm not ever trying to have things stacked against the defense as far as in the trial, things that get admitted, motions in limine, etc. But I feel like her questioning was so ridiculous. Her theory of Brandon pretending to be shot or even shooting at himself is preposterous. So she knew she deserved all that ire that Treena K had to give, and I just feel like she took it. But I'm curious as to what you thought, because in the other chats I didn't say like, oh, that's what she gets. I just, listen, I don't need to be an agitator in people's other people's chats. Like, if that's what their collective chat thinks and agrees, who am I? But you and I, we got a thing going on, right? So I want to hear what you have to say. Let me know down below. Toodles.